and welcome to the Pragmatic Product Chat series, where we tackle the biggest challenges facing today's product management, product marketing, and other market and data-driven professionals with some of the best minds in the industry. I am Rebecca Kalogeris for Pragmatic Institute and your host for this episode. And today we are going to talk about something that's like on everyone's mind. We are both at the same time simultaneously like tired of hearing about it and don't hear enough to make it usable. We're going to talk about AI agents. And I'm extremely excited to have on today one of my favorite guests, Dan Corbin, who is a Pragmatic instructor. He is the creator of a couple of our different AI courses. He has an engineering background, so I think his brain also works really well this way, as well as just deep product skills. So welcome, Dan.
It's great to be back. I always look forward to and enjoy our chats.
It's always one of my favorites. All right, let's start with like the basics. What exactly is an AI agent?
So the easiest way to think about it, it's right in the word agent. An agent has agency. So it can take action on behalf of you. So an AI agent, it's a system that can act autonomously and go out and do tasks, make decisions on your behalf. So maybe you don't even know it's off and running, but it's going out, it's doing work, it's performing logic and analysis just like you would do and completing work that you otherwise would have had to do yourself, but it's handling it all for you. But as we'll talk about, I'm sure, in a little bit, it differs with some of the other AI technology that we've seen out there because, again, it's acting completely autonomously on your behalf.
Can you give me like an example of one or maybe like a common use case that you see people use just to help everybody like bring it down?
Sure. So you think about I guess you could start with, product managers. Product managers, they have a lot of things that they do manually. You think about all of the documentation that you have to put together as a product manager or all of the feedback that you have to kind of sift through. These are prime examples, prime use cases for AI. It can take lots of data all at once. And, if you're just saying, hey, this is our, daily intake of all of our support tickets. I want you to go do that analysis and then log that back into our problem backlog to keep track of our market evidence. So what are those things that we're hearing from people? So there's lots of use cases. Anything, you think about any process that you do in a repeatable fashion where you want to be able to say, you know what, I do this all the time. It takes up a lot of my time. Think of it, if you could go and explain it to an intern and say, here's the steps that I take. Here's the logic I use. Please go take this on behalf of me. And, you mentioned the AI classes we have at Pragmatic. One of those that I teach is AI for product managers. And we actually look at how you can use AI at every single stage of the of the product development lifecycle. So discovery, validation, ideation, prioritization. At every stage, AI agents can help you because you're always doing things, that you're having to repeat at each of those stages. So there's lots of use cases and workflows that AI agents can lend a hand with.
Excellent. Okay. And then just, you touched on it a little bit, but let's talk about how it's different than some of the other AI tools. Let's start with GPT, right? We all know our good friends Claude and ChatGPT. So how, when we think about AI agent, how is that different than what a GPT does?
Yeah. So you have your LLMs like Gemini, Claude, ChatGPT. And so like Gemini and ChatGPT, you can kind of make specialized versions of those within those that handle specific tasks. So in Gemini, they're called gems. In ChatGPT, they're called GPTs. And what they do is they generate specific things. They handle very specific tasks, and they're really good at, almost anything. I won't because it's too hard to come up with all the use cases, but they primarily generate, it's like interacting with a human. So what we like to say is GPTs generate.
Okay. All right. And then what about like AI assistants that we see?
So AI assistants, those are kind of they can kind of plug into different tools that you're using. Assistants, think of those as helpers. So maybe they're going to serve as a reminder. Maybe they're on your phone. Maybe they're in your calendar. Maybe they're going to help you grab information or schedule things. But again, their scope is kind of tend to be very narrow, and their tasks tend to be pretty narrow in scope. They're not going to initiate a lot of workflows or anything like that.
Okay. And same thing, like co-pilots assist you with a task. So they're sort of smaller domain and more reactive to our request, right?
Exactly.
Versus, and the intern analogy I think is really good for lots of reasons that we'll talk about, right? But it's like an intern, I want to be specific and precise, but then I expect them to have agency. Like I want to say, you need to get here. Here's what I would do, but I want them to figure things out along the way. But I also would not trust them with like payroll, right? Like there are things, there are areas where I think that would go. And then what about sort of, you think bigger, you think AI automation, right? And is that also kind of the same? How does that differ from an agent?
So you think about it, you can almost put it on like a graph. And, with AI automation, you're getting a lot there's more of a complexity there because that's going to be taking on some more repetitive tasks. And it is going to, start executing and doing things a little bit more complex, but you're not going to have as much of the logic built in. It's not going to have to really think through and really replicate the decision making that you might do. So it's going to handle repeated tasks, but it's still going to be pretty rules based. Right. So it's not going to really have to do much adapting.
And that's a big point, right? If I have to tell it every rule of every step, it limits the things and it doesn't learn and it can't bring things that don't match that.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas an AI agent, the way you would use it is it does all of those things, right? I give you bumpers and parameters, but I'm expecting it to make decisions that, it's all not a tree. If this happens, you go one. If this happens, it goes like, that's not how it works.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And with AI automation, it might not handle things very well if there's dramatic shifts in your market or with your users. But an agent, if it's getting new data, if it's getting new context, it should be able to adapt to some of those changes.
Should. What a great word.
Yeah, right?
When they adapt, does it flag things for you, right? Does it just change or start doing it different? Or like, will it be like, we're going to do something like, how do I know it's changed? If it sees something different and it started to act different, I would think I need to know that. So there's a level of transparency.
Yeah. So there's two main things that we need to think about with this. And number one, it's how you train your agents. So you can train it to notice a level of change that if it changes to a certain degree, it will alert you. And so, for example, I have a bot that I've trained to draft email responses in my voice using like how, basically a knowledge base of my, how I respond to things, what I believe in. So it has there's a knowledge base of, all of my information, and it knows specifically how I write. Now I've trained it, and within the training model and within the workflow, there's basically within the brain of an AI agent, there's something called an eval. And that's really the IP of how the AI agent works. I can set a threshold saying, hey, now that I've trained you, I want you to grade yourself. And on a scale from 0 to 100, and if you ever go below 90, I want you to alert me, because that shows that there's some sort of underlying drift. Now, the other thing, that's one way to alert. But the other thing is, I'm still the human in the loop. I'm still going to look at those emails. Do those emails automatically go out? No. They get saved as a draft. because I want to see that. And this is something that I think it's so important that the listeners remember. We're not setting and forgetting these agents. You're an active participant in this. You would never give your intern a high important task, describe what you want them to do, and never review their work. That would make you a bad boss. We're all going to be agent bosses in the near future if you're not already. So if you want to be a good boss, you need to see, how are they working? How are they performing? How can I embed my thought process and my logic to improve the workflow so that their output and their performance is better?
All right. So let's get down to the nitty gritty. I think this is the 4th podcast we've done on agents, and I love it. Right. And I love it. And I find it interesting. And then people talk about it, and I go to build one and I see all the examples, and they're all so robust that it's very intimidating. And I just think, you know what, I'll just program my GPT a little differently. Right. And so there's just the questions of, how do I build and manage? How do I start this? How do I make my agent?
Okay. So I think the first thing you need to do is to identify what is a good use case for an agent. So you want to start with a repeatable process that you know very well. And what I recommend is that you start with a one-step process. For example, maybe you were sending out a status update every month or every week, and that there's certain things that you need to fill in, and that you just need to provide that information and send that out. So maybe that's your one-step workflow. And then you think about what is one that might involve 2 steps. And then would be one that be 2 steps, but involving in 2 integrations. So it first begins with understanding how you work and being able to articulate that very step-by-step process and being able to break it down. There's sometimes you'll see a funny video where teachers will have peanut butter jelly knife and a piece of, a loaf of bread, and they'll ask their kids to how do you make peanut butter sandwich? And they literally do what the students say. And when they realize how hard it is, and when you have to describe it just step by step, it's a lot harder than you think. So you have to have the understanding of, all right, what are those specific steps I take? So that's from a kind of mental perspective, understanding
So know a process inside out, find one that doesn't have a ton of steps, and make sure that you can really articulate to the detailed level, right? Making a recipe that someone could follow without you there.
Yes.
Do you need to think about number of systems involved, or what kind of where the stuff is? That's behind a wall. That's going to be a problem. Do we have to think through those things?
So, and probably the best place to start is in a playground. You want to start in a sandbox. This is why I recommend using Zapier, because Zapier, if you haven't used it before, this has been a tool that's been around for a long time. You can sign up and use it for free. Now, I'll caution you that you probably can't sign up and use some of your work software. You may not be able to connect your Salesforce instance, or maybe you can sign up your Outlook, but you might have to work with IT. But you could sign up and start to play around and connect with your Outlook, or your Gmail and some of your other folders. And what's nice is they have some built-in templates of agents. And what I recommend is people start playing around with the templates of the agents. And for example, one is that will allow you to look at all of the meetings that you have for the following day on your calendar. And it'll go out and it'll research everyone you're going to meet with, pull together, do some research on their company, on their products, and put together a meeting dossier, and maybe even give you some interesting conversation starters for them. And you can customize the AI to say, all right, for my particular company, what might they need from me? So again, you can take these templates, tweak them for your scenario, and then have your first agent up and running. So we could spend the next 10 podcasts talking about all of the different platforms. But if I was going to recommend one for people just to get their sea legs about how do I build an agent, I would recommend Zapier, trying one of the templates that they have, and then maybe from there, creating their own template, creating their own agent just by connecting some of the tools after they've tried using the templates.
Well, you can see, again, just even in that one template example you gave, you can see how many use cases exist, right? The meeting preparation. Well, let's think about if I wanted to use it, maybe not for all my meetings, maybe, but I want to use it for my Nahida meetings, right? And for someone to give me some pieces there, I could see that as a high reward, low risk, right? Piece of that, which sounds like a place to start, right?
Yeah.
So do you have, tell me some of the agents you use, Dan.
So I actually do use that particular one. I like to be able to use agents that, so I do have some that I use at work when I go on site for in working with clients. I like to do a follow-up because before I meet with them, I say, what is your desired outcome from this training? So knowing that going in, I have notes that I take after each meeting. And so I'm taking, kind of following up notes on each class. What is the desired outcome? And then we say, all right, what do we recommend based upon what we learned? What are some of the things? So I have a GPT. So it's, not really an agent. So I guess it's more of a GPT, but it just automates an email so I just feed in the information that I need really quick. And it puts out this really nice format really quick. And all I do is I copy and paste it into an email, and that gets out right away. And it's formatted in this nice way. I'm a big fan of smart brevity. It's a writing style. So it just kind of makes it very scannable for them. And it says day 1, here's what we did. Day 2, and it kind of refers back to the outcomes that we wanted. I'm also right now, I'm working on different multi-step workflows where I'm essentially, so I build out the lesson that I want to create. And then I'm trying to automate not only the outline and the content, but the PowerPoints, the actual slide deck, and the talk track for each of them. And I'm doing that along with, I want to have an avatar of Dan so that if I want, this is something that I want to have like a little like YouTube channel of just like clips of, hey, here's a little something that I have. And if I decide to go and change it or update it, I can just change the transcript, and then AI Dan, it's seamless because, I don't have to go back and film it again. It's automatically done because AI Dan just generates on the fly.
I bet AI Dan is just as delightful as real Dan.
Let's hope so. Right? I'm actually in an AI operations boot camp right now.
Oh, fun.
And that is my capstone. That's what I think is my capstone project. I think I may have bitten off more than we can chew. We'll see.
Ah, yes. All right. So that's one of the ways you use it. And like you talked about in the new AI course, we talk about how you could use sort of GPTs, right, for every step of the life cycle, product life cycle.
Yeah.
And certainly you can do that with agents. Are there areas where you think, in particular, agents bring extra, right? There'd be even more larger step value by putting an agent in this section of the product development lifecycle?
I really do. And I think discovery when I work with the companies all over the world in teams, too often I hear like, oh, we struggle to go out and do enough discovery, do enough Nihito. And one thing you can do is you can create an AI agent to be available to do discovery at any time. So I mentioned AI avatar Dan. What if you had an AI, product version, like say a product manager, let's say I created one for Pragmatic, and we wanted to do a particular research, and we were thinking about doing a class on a new area, and we said, hey, take our, do your online Nihito and earn 10% off on your next class. And people did a 20-minute interview with an AI agent version of me, where I went and I asked questions about them, challenges that they're facing. And I had trained it based upon lots of other, where I had fed in audio of other interviews that I had done. So it knew how I asked open-ended, high-gain questions, where I had really got the user to articulate the problems they were facing, the challenges, and we avoided kind of getting into solutioning or anything like that. I could take so that's one agent that you can do. And that way we have possible discovery going 24/7. Another thing we could do is we could take all of those recordings and feed it into another agent that would then transcribe all of that information and then extract all of the kind of key insights from that, group them, do affinity mapping using sentiment analysis to say, here are the big insights. This is what we're learning from our discovery. We could mix that from the AI agent Dan in real Dan going out and talking to people. So we would never recommend that you stop going out talking to people individually. That's still absolutely essential. So you would take both of those, put it in there, feed it into this new agent, which would bring it all together, extract out those key insights, do that affinity mapping, kind of label each group, give them a name, and then maybe generate a summary report with example quotes and maybe kind of a quote or a account for each of the themes to kind of just show, and graphs that go along with it to kind of show, all right, what is the pervasiveness of each of these?
So I have to say it makes sense. It sounds exciting. The analysis makes a ton of sense because you have structured and unstructured data. And frankly, that is just a place it's better than we are, right? Like it can see things that we can't. My reaction on the first part, like the Nihito, it's yes. And as a customer, right? Like one of the nice things about Nihito from a customer is you feel heard and you feel cared about, right? Yeah. If you're inviting me to talk to a not real person, that does not feel quite the same, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't. So, I mean, but
that's a great point because a lot of people would not want to do that. Like there was a study recently that 1/3 of people would rather talk for therapy. They would rather talk to a chatbot or AI than a real person.
Like you wouldn't be embarrassed. You wouldn't feel judged. Oh, now that is interesting.
So you and I, if I was doing a Nihito, I'm going to want to talk to a person.
Yeah, that's super interesting.
I bet you my daughter, she would probably just want to talk to, she'd be cool talking to AI Dan. Well, not Dan, but like she wouldn't want to talk.
She doesn't want to talk to any Dan.
But you know what? It's one of those things where I would probably, to your point, say, you could talk to AI Dan, Avatar Dan now, or you can schedule a real appointment.
Yeah. Oh, no, see, I like that. Then you can kind of see where someone goes.
Better way to do it.
Yeah. I mean, you're right, though. You could see times the other thing you'd figure it would be shorter. It can be more tight, like depending on I like that. Talking about the structured and unstructured data, another place I would think that agents could be super helpful is analysis, right? And not just analysis. It's one of those things from a go-to-market perspective we're always looking at, right? Because you can I can see how each individual thing performed, and I can kind of see what moved what. But then you start to talk about first attribution, and like it gets really kind of complicated to see results and how different techniques work together to create things. And I would think both in pulling the metrics and analyzing them and considering recommendations, it would be, again, a place where the AI brain would be particularly strong.
Yeah. And, it's not like you would just get that one report back. You could then you should be able to talk to the agent and say, wait, I want to dig in deeper here. And maybe go back and do some analysis.
Oh, that's amazing too, because that always happens. Like if you do have the privilege of working with like a data science or an analyst, not necessarily a data science, but just like an analyst, they bring you things, and the first thing you always have is more questions. Like, thank you for the answers to these questions, but now I have all of these. And they're like, I'm sorry, you were at the top of the list, and now you have to go back down to the list of the queue of things. So that sort of interactivity and the ability to go back and forth continually is pretty exciting.
But I can't tell you how many times I've typed into a GPT and ChatGPT, explain this to me as if I was a fifth grader.
Then you get the answer and you think, okay, try a fourth grader. Let's see about. Let's talk about another place that is we're kind of always looking for repeatable, unbiased ways across the organization is when we're talking about prioritization, right? And deciding what we should do. And again, it's one of those multifaceted things where I feel like an agent could be a really interesting play here. So how might in this world that we're building, literally as we speak, how would you see using an agent for prioritization?
So it's really important that prioritization is so key for companies, and sometimes politics and emotion get played into it because you have like, hey, I really want my thing moved to the front. And you really always have to say, all right, what does the market want and what aligns to our strategy? So you really need to be saying, all right, what is all that market evidence? And how impactful is this to our users, and how aligned is it to the strategy? That market evidence piece was always difficult because the data was always scattered everywhere. But now with AI, you can take, as you pointed out, all of that unstructured data from Zendesk, from sales support, from maybe you've got 1,500 survey results. Maybe you've got every different product team doing their own discovery. You could take all of that data together, put it into the AI, and start questioning it and extracting insights. So that helps with the market evidence side. The problem impact and the strategy side, again, if you can articulate, these are the metrics, this is how we're going to prioritize. This is our prioritized personas. This is our roadmap and our plan, and our specific OKRs, the KPIs for the team. If you can put that into a document and really have supporting documents behind it, that's going to power the API. So in my AI for product managers class, I have an AI agent that I test or that I demo, where there is an enhancement request form that people can fill out, internal, external, and you explain what it is and why you need it and what your role is and some other vital information. Now, what happens is as soon as the form is submitted, that triggers the agent. And that triggers the AI to begin analyzing the request. And it goes through all of the product strategy, the KPIs, the OKRs, the prioritization framework, the constraints and commitments of the teams. And it really dives deep into all of how the teams are supposed to be prioritizing their work. And it comes back with an analysis in two specific areas. It does a user impact from anything from low at a scale from 1 to 5, what is the impact? And it explains why it's a 1 through a 5. And there's a specific, in the logic of the AI, this is how you give the rating for each. And it gives a rating for how well this aligns to the strategy. So you could have something that's a 5 in terms of user impact. But if it doesn't align to our strategy, what we're focused on, it's going to be a low. So now, would we just say, all right, our prioritization is done? No. But that's going to go into the problem backlog. And we're going to be able to say, hey, we probably, we're going to factor this in because, when we've done the analysis, it's still going to need a human to review it. But this is where it can help. Because it's not only it's going to add to the market evidence. We're still counting how many people, how often are we seeing this? But we're really saying, all right, is this what our strategy is calling for?
Mm-hmm. Well, again, the intern that we don't let make all the decisions, right? Because there are it's amazing. There's no other way to put it. It's amazing what these tools can do and what they can help us unlock, but they don't come without some risks and pitfalls. Yeah. Right. And talking about the risk and pitfalls doesn't mean that we don't like agents. Clearly, we like agents, right? But it is what we need to do to consider. So let's talk a little bit about those.
Yeah. And I want to talk. So one risk I saw is when I first built that agent, it wasn't good. It was bad.
Yeah.
And I deliberately put in, I was like, how could somebody trick this into making it sound like, oh, you definitely need to have this, even though it really wasn't an important feature. And I was able to do it. So over time, I had to train the agent and update the logic. But if you didn't have a human in the loop, like you said, checking it would be bad. So again, we love the agents. They can be so great,
amazing.
But they can still be wrong. If you're getting an agent that is working properly in the 90% of the time, that's really good. So you can't trust this without verification. They're going to be wrong. So you need to, they're going to help you be more efficient, but you're not going to just outsource them. So we're looking for efficiency gains. We're not looking for it to just completely take work off our desk and we never have to think about it again. So we still need to make sure that we're in the loop, that it's getting done correctly. So you could avoid that by saying, all right, at what points am I going to come in and validate the work? I'm always going to check an email before it goes out. I'm still going to review the analysis of the prioritization it gave it, and be able to, maybe I need to go back and tweak it. The other thing I would recommend, don't build too many agents. I saw this when I was running an API company, and when APIs first became a thing, everything became an API, and they were just everywhere. And you need to be very thoughtful about how you build things out. You need to be judicious and think about how might my agents work with agents in marketing and in sales, and how are we going to collaborate together? So this is all what we refer to as AI operations. And what we recommend is that you're documenting everything you're doing, you're auditing things in a regular way. And I recommend that you take the crawl, walk, run approach. Again, you want to start small and think about together as an organization, as the product group, where does it make sense for us to have an agent that maybe all of us can use? And the other thing, if you're at a company that has product operations, maybe they should take the lead rather than every single product team trying to have to figure this out for themselves. This probably is something that makes sense to be a little bit centralized and say, okay, yes, AI is table stakes for any product manager, but maybe everyone has to go out and learn this all themselves. Maybe the product operations teams can kind of start to take a lead on this.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. whew, that's a lot to think about, right? And a lot to go and play with and learn, and lots of opportunities. Because I think the other thing that you and I have talked about too is not only so when you first built the agent, it was bad and it could be tricked. But we've both seen this too, where it can be easy to feel like, well, I've checked the first 20 emails. I don't have to check anymore. It's always right. It just like you learn bad behaviors. Everybody, like, is what you take your kid to school and they're great kids. And then all of a sudden they're like, where did they learn that bad behavior, right? Like you continually learn, and sometimes you're not learning the right way. So you have to come in and teach and retrain and update on a, it never stops. Just like to your point, it's a really good analogy. If we are the manager of the agent, a manager of your star employee, you're still managing on a regular basis.
Yeah. And, if there's going to be that underlying prompt drift, which is going to change the performance of your agent. And over time, you might decide, you know what, I've been running this off of ChatGPT 4. Maybe I want to go over and switch over to Claude. And you can switch out those models. Maybe it depends on how your organization works. But again, this is not a set it and forget it thing. You need to be conscious of this. And because not only do you want it to make sure it's still operating well, but you could see a lot of potential efficiency gains, in the future.
Yeah. And I will tell you, probably a significant portion of the people listening are like, oh, it's too late. I'm already way too far behind.
Oh, no.
I'll never catch up. And you're like, no, this is new. But again, the sooner you play with it, the sooner you understand, the better. And you are definitely not too late to this party.
Yeah, this is like watching Grey's Anatomy. You don't need to go back and watch like the first 9 seasons. You can jump in right now and figure out what's going on. It's fine. It's moved so fast. If you really did try to go back and learn everything for the last 2 years in AI, it's all changed. Yeah. It doesn't matter. You can start today and you're totally fine. So no, it's, it's not too late. It is not too late. Listen to Rebecca, just jump in and, come on in. The water's fine.
Yep. And like you say, AI is table stakes. Yep. Using it well is a differentiator. And that's what we want to help you do.
Yep.
All right, Dan, if you were going to have everybody listening do 2 things differently tomorrow based on what we talked about today, what would it be?
Number 1, think about what is that one process, something that you think, what, I think I could explain this to an intern, something simple, and I could articulate to them that, all right, I want you to go do this. This is how I handle this. And then I want you to go to Zapier. I want you to create that free account. And I want you to, after playing around with some of their agent templates, I want you to see if you can automate that process.
Love it. All right, Dan, as always, thank you. I know you continually work on the courses. I know you continually work with AI yourself. So I'm going to ask right now with recordings that you come back on again as we continue to talk about these things, because I think you're always a great guest to have on, and I appreciate it.
I love talking with you. I love talking AI. As I say, my wife and daughter have no interest in talking with this about me. So this is an absolute delight for me.
Excellent. All right. That does it for today's episode. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And don't forget to join us next week when we tackle another great topic designed to help you elevate your product, your company, and your career.